Your French textbook won't teach you casual spoken French. It will teach you written formal French, but not casual spoken French. And it's very important to keep that in mind because a lot of people think that they just need to buy a French textbook and maybe in a year they can become fluent, but that's not how it works. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you the three main points you have to keep in mind, okay, when it comes to learning French with a textbook. Okay, let's see how it works. The first important thing to understand is cultural. So in France, we have school French and everyday French. So basically, when you go to school in France, you're expected by your teacher to use formal speech. And the teacher will use formal speech with the kids also. So from the time we are in primary school, we're expected to call the teacher master, which means maître or maîtresse if she's a woman. And we're expected to use the pronoun, the formal pronoun vous. So when we talk to the teacher, we need to use vous. Okay? The teacher can use tu with the kid because the teacher is supposed to be on a higher level. It has a higher position compared to the kids, but the kids always have to use vous with the teacher. And we're expected to speak in a very polite way. Okay? And the teacher will do the same. When we actually go to middle school, we're not expected to say maître or maîtresse anymore, but we will call the teacher madame or monsieur, which is like sir or miss. But we still speak in a very formal way. Okay? And the thing is, whatever you have which is written, anything that is written is very formal and is not the same French that you're going to use when you speak. Okay? For example, in written French, you're often going to see nous to say oui. For example, nous allons au cinéma. Nous allons au cinéma. But in spoken French, we actually don't use nous at all. Okay? I mean, you can hear it, but it's really rare. And we use it in very formal contexts. So, for example, let's say that you're watching TV and there's the president talking, he might use that nous, okay? Because it's very formal. Or maybe if you're in a meeting with a very important client, you might use that nous also. For example, you're presenting a project, I don't know. But in everyday life, with your friends, with even people you don't know, with your family, you're not going to use nous. Okay, you're going to say on all the time. So, for example, here, instead of saying nous allons au restaurant or cinéma, I don't remember what I said, you're going to say on va au restaurant. On va au cinéma. Okay, that sounds a lot more natural. And I know it's frustrating because most of you guys learn nous and you get this habit of saying nous all the time, but we never use nous. Okay, so try to drop that habit and instead say on. Another thing also that you see in written French is very formal, how do you say, very formal questions. So you have something called inverting questions, which is, for example, questions like, do you speak French? So maybe you've learned something like, parlez-vous le français? But this type of question, where you switch basically a verb and subject, parlez-vous, is not used at all in everyday French, okay? Same thing when it comes to what questions. For example, what do you want? Que voulez-vous? What do you want? We never ask questions that way. That's too formal, okay? So that's mostly something you're going to see written. Instead, we can use two types of questions. So, for example, instead of saying parlez-vous le français, you can say est-ce que vous parlez le français? Est-ce que means is it that? So, literally, is it that you speak French? Or even more casual, vous parlez le français? See, it's very simple actually. So, you take the sentence, add the question mark at the end, and done. You have your question. Okay, and that's mostly the case when you have a yes no answer. Okay, So if now, for example, if I want to say, "Do you want to eat?" and I want to say, I want to talk to my friend, right? Veux-tu manger? That's very formal. And there's no way I speak like that to my friends. So instead, I'm going to say, Tu veux manger? Very casually. Or you can even say, Est-ce que tu veux manger? Is it that you want to eat? So in everyday casual spoken French, we use this est-ce que in questions, or sometimes we just drop it. So it's not because you don't ask a question very formally that you're going to sound not polite. Okay, so you can be casual and be polite at the same time. Okay, so you just need to use the vous, okay, in your question, and that makes it polite, respectful. Okay, but you use the casual structure. The second thing you need to keep in mind when you study with textbooks is that the vocab could be outdated. That's why it's very important to watch a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of Netflix shows, listen to podcasts to see what people actually use in everyday life. For example, a few words that I've heard from students. Let's see. You have bicyclette. So bicyclette is quite old, and we don't say bicyclette anymore. It means bike, okay, or bicycle, but we don't say bicycle anymore. We say vélo, okay. So saying bicyclette sounds a little weird, at least where I live in the Paris region. Maybe in other French-speaking countries, it could be different, but at least in France or in the Paris region where I'm from, we don't say that. Okay. Another thing I've seen is mobile to talk about the cell phone. We say portable. Okay. There might be also old expressions that are used or that are used only in certain regions. Okay. So it really depends where you are in France. Okay. So some words can be different. A very famous one is pain au chocolat. Okay. So you go in the south, they say chocolatine. In the north, they say pain au chocolat. And I think in English, people say chocolate croissant. But by the way, chocolate croissant, if you say that, no one knows what you're talking about. It's croissant without chocolate or pain au chocolat with chocolate. If you say chocolate croissant, it sounds like a mix of both, and we don't know what it is. Okay. So just keep that in mind. And finally, for the last point, the third point, which is really, really, really important, this is pronunciation. So maybe you're going to receive some basic pronunciation rules in the textbook. But the problem is that in everyday life, we're not going to talk as clearly as in your book. So sometimes in your book, you're going to have audios or maybe a dialogue to read. But when you listen to maybe YouTube videos, podcasts, you realize, wow, I don't understand anything that's going too fast. And the reason why is because there are a lot of word connections that you need to learn and that are not taught in textbooks. Okay. I talked about these word connections in one of the videos that I published on the channel. So I'll try to put a link right here or down in the description below. And try to remember that the textbook by itself is not enough to be able to become fluent and to speak French naturally. So let me know in the comments what textbook you are using if you're learning French. I'm really curious to know what you're using. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!